Colleen Ritzer was 24 years old, a dedicated math teacher at Danvers High School. Her students loved her. Her colleagues respected her. On October 22, 2013, she never came home. What began as a missing person case became one of Massachusetts' most shocking crimes. Hit like, subscribe, and share for more true crime stories. The investigation started with a teenager walking alone. On the evening of October 22, 2013, Diana Chisholm contacted the Danvers Police Department with growing concern. Her 14-year-old son, Philip Chisholm, had failed to return home after school that day. This was highly unusual behavior for the teenager. Diana explained to the dispatcher that Philip was a student at the local high school, and emphasized that such behavior was completely out of character for him. The family had recently relocated from Tennessee to Danvers, Massachusetts, and Philip had never exhibited concerning behavior like this before. The Danvers Police Department responded swiftly and decisively. They posted Philip's photo and physical description across their social media networks, hoping someone in the community might have information about his whereabouts. The department also issued a reverse 911 call to local residents, alerting them to the missing teenager and requesting any information that might help locate him. Simultaneously, another troubling disappearance was unfolding in the same community. Colleen Ritzer's parents grew increasingly worried when their 24-year-old daughter failed to return home from work. Colleen was a dedicated math teacher at Danvers High School, known throughout the community for her commitment to her students. She was an exceptionally organized young woman who maintained a strict routine and always informed her parents of any changes to her schedule. Her dedication to teaching was evident in everything she did, making her unexplained absence deeply alarming to her family. As both families reported their loved ones missing, the quiet town of Danvers began to sense that something was terribly wrong. Little did anyone know that these two missing person cases were about to converge in the most horrific way imaginable. As Officer Neil Hovey began his search along the dark, isolated stretches of Old Route 1 North, at 12:28 a.m. on October 23, 2013, Officer Neil Hovey of the Danvers Police Department was patrolling Old Route 1 North, searching for the missing teenager Philip Chisholm. The area was rural, icy, and poorly lit, making it a dangerous place for anyone to be walking alone at night. As Officer Hovey scoured the isolated highway, his headlights caught a figure walking on a bridge that led down to the dark road below. He immediately pulled over and approached the individual. The person matched Philip Chisholm's description perfectly. The young man was wearing shorts, a zip-up sweatshirt, black socks, and shoes, with a backpack slung over his shoulder. Officer Hovey, a seasoned and experienced officer with years of training, immediately noticed several alarming details about the situation. First, Philip was walking alone in an unsafe area at a dangerous time of night. Second, he was dressed inappropriately for the cold, wet weather, wearing only shorts despite the freezing temperatures. Most disturbing was Philip's demeanor during their interaction. He looked past Officer Hovey as if the officer wasn't even there, displaying a disconnected and distant expression. When asked where he lived, Philip responded that he had nowhere to call home. He claimed he had been living on the streets for days. However, Officer Hovey's trained eye caught something inconsistent about this story. Philip didn't appear messy or disheveled, like someone who had been exposed to the elements for an extended period. His clothing, while inappropriate for the weather, was relatively clean. Concerned and suspicious about the teenager's story and behavior, Officer Hovey decided to conduct a frisk. In Philip's pocket, he discovered plastic containing a driver's license, insurance card, and credit card. None of these items belonged to Philip. They belonged to Colleen Ritzer. Officer Hovey's instincts told him something was seriously wrong, and what he was about to discover in Philip's backpack would confirm his worst fears and shock the entire investigation team. Upon arriving at the Danvers police station, Officer Hovey began a thorough and systematic search of Philip Chisholm's backpack. What he discovered sent chills through the investigation team. Inside the bag, he found a woman's purse and women's underwear, items that had no innocent explanation for a 14-year-old boy to be carrying in the middle of the night. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. Deep inside the backpack, Officer Hovey found a box cutter covered in a reddish-brown substance. Officer Hovey immediately recognized the substance as blood. When he carefully asked Philip whose blood it was, the teenager's response was as chilling as it was cryptic. "It was the girl's," Philip said matter-of-factly. Officer Hovey briefly left the room to contact the Danvers Police Department with this critical information. During his absence, another officer remained with Philip in the interrogation room. The officer asked where the girl was. Philip's response was delivered without emotion or hesitation. "She was buried in the woods," he said. The officer, desperately hoping there might still be a chance to save whoever this girl was, asked Philip if they could help her. Philip's single-word answer confirmed their worst fears. "No," he said simply. As officers examined Philip more closely under the harsh fluorescent lights of the station, they noticed brown and red stains on the sleeves of his sweatshirt and a ski mask around his neck. The evidence was mounting rapidly. Philip's clothing and shoes were immediately confiscated as evidence. As officers processed Philip at the station, another team was racing to Danvers High School, where security camera footage would reveal the terrifying final moments of Colleen Ritzer's life. Officer Steve Belair arrived at Danvers High School to investigate Colleen Ritzer's disappearance. He immediately began gathering information while waiting for security camera footage to be made available. As the investigation progressed throughout the early morning hours, officers discovered several critical pieces of evidence scattered around the school grounds. They found Colleen's bag discarded in a recycling bin. Her shoes and clothes were discovered near a running trail close to the student parking lot. Her personal items had been hidden in bushes near the path. Most alarmingly, when police examined the recycling bin more closely, they observed what appeared to be blood staining the interior. Another officer searching inside the school building discovered what looked like blood in the women's bathroom on the second floor, located near Colleen's classroom. This discovery heightened suspicions and urgency among the investigating team. Officer Belair, who had seen Philip Chisholm's photo from the missing person report circulated on social media earlier that evening, began carefully reviewing the CCTV footage. At 2:30 p.m., on October 22nd, he identified a figure matching Philip's description on the video. The footage revealed a chilling sequence of events that would become central to the investigation. It showed Philip following Colleen Ritzer out of her classroom and walking down the school hallway behind her. The video then captured Colleen entering the second-floor women's bathroom, completely unaware that Philip had followed her inside. A few minutes later, Philip emerged from the bathroom wearing different clothing than when he entered. Most disturbingly, he was now wearing a mask over his face, as if attempting to conceal his identity from the security cameras. At 3:16 p.m., the footage showed Philip leaving the school and entering the visitor parking lot. He then returned to the second-floor women's bathroom carrying a recycling bin. After a brief period inside, he exited the bathroom, pulling the bin behind him and dragged it outside the school, out of the camera's view. The most terrifying aspect of the footage was what it didn't show. Colleen Ritzer was never seen leaving the second-floor women's bathroom. As the CCTV evidence painted a horrifying picture of what had transpired, the Massachusetts State Police arrived to begin a full-scale crime scene investigation. The Danvers Police Department took Philip Chisholm into custody and transported him to the police station for formal questioning regarding Colleen Ritzer's disappearance. Simultaneously, the Massachusetts State Police arrived at Danvers High School to conduct a comprehensive crime scene investigation, focusing their efforts on locating the bloody recycling bin captured on surveillance footage. Diana Chisholm arrived at the police station and was questioned by officers about her son. During her interview, she expressed deep concerns about Philip's mental health. She explained that he had been prone to emotional outbursts due to the stress of her recent separation from her husband. Diana also revealed that there was a documented history of mental health issues within her family, information that would become important later in the case. At approximately 2:00 a.m., Philip Chisholm and his mother Diana were led into an interrogation room at the Danvers police station, where they were met by Trooper and Sergeant Philip Tansey. Before the formal interview commenced, Philip and his mother were allowed to speak privately for approximately 10 minutes. During the interrogation, officers standing outside the room quietly fed information to the interrogators about the CCTV footage, which showed Philip following Colleen into the women's bathroom, with Colleen never emerging and Philip later being seen covered in blood. While Philip was being questioned inside the station, the Massachusetts State Police Air Wing and Danvers Fire Department deployed infrared technology to search the surrounding area for any signs of Colleen's body. Cadaver tracking dogs and their skilled handlers also combed the area around Danvers High School. Eventually, Philip confessed to the investigators. He stated that he had knocked Colleen unconscious with a karate chop and then cut her twice with a box cutter. He showed officers on a map where he had disposed of Colleen's body in the woods behind the school. As search teams converged on the wooded area Philip had indicated, a forensic scientist was about to make a discovery that would confirm everyone's worst nightmare. Around 3 a.m., a forensic scientist searching the woods behind Danvers High School made a disturbing discovery. A toe with pink nail polish was protruding from a small pile of leaves. The scientist immediately called for paramedics, who arrived quickly and began carefully excavating the area. Their search led them to Colleen Ritzer's deceased body, buried in the shallow grave Philip had described during his interrogation. Despite the paramedics' efforts, it was immediately clear that Colleen had died. Her body was carefully transported to the medical examiner's office for a comprehensive autopsy. Dr. Anna MacDonald, a forensic pathologist, conducted the examination and discovered male DNA on Colleen's body. When this DNA was analyzed, it matched Philip Chisholm's profile, providing definitive physical evidence linking him directly to the crime. Dr. MacDonald's examination revealed petechiae, small areas of bleeding around Colleen's eyes and mouth. This is a classic sign of asphyxiation. The blood found on Philip's box cutter was also confirmed to match Colleen's DNA, establishing that the weapon had been used in the violent attack. The examination of Colleen's body revealed multiple wounds on her neck, indicating she had been slashed repeatedly in the same area, causing extensive injuries. The autopsy report documented at least 16 cuts to her neck. Several of these wounds were fatal, while even the non-fatal wounds would have caused unbearable pain. One wound was so deep that it chipped her vertebrae. Based on all the evidence, Dr. MacDonald concluded that Colleen died due to sharp force injuries, asphyxiation by strangulation, and the severe injuries to her neck. As news of Colleen's brutal murder spread through Danvers, the community was about to learn the identity of her killer. When news spread throughout Danvers that Colleen Ritzer had been murdered, the community was overwhelmed with shock and grief. The revelation that Philip Chisholm, a 14-year-old student, was the primary suspect seemed impossible to comprehend. How could someone so young commit such a horrific act of violence against a beloved teacher? Philip Chisholm was formally charged with aggravated sexual assault and murder in connection with Colleen's death. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Philip pleaded not guilty to all charges. This decision sparked controversy and raised important questions about how young offenders should be treated within the criminal justice system. Some argued that Philip's age should be considered, while others believed that the severity of the crime warranted adult charges regardless of his age. Colleen Ritzer's students were devastated by her death. They remembered her as a kind, loving, and dedicated teacher who consistently went above and beyond to help them succeed academically and personally. The loss of such a beloved mentor was unbearable for the entire school community. The Danvers community came together to mourn Colleen's death and honor her memory through various tributes. Vigils were held with candles lighting up the night. A moment of silence was observed for Colleen before the first World Series game for the Boston Red Sox, bringing her tragedy to regional attention. An enormous number of people from all walks of life gathered to express their sorrow and provide support to Colleen's family during this devastating time. The collective grief demonstrated how deeply Colleen had touched the lives of those around her, and how profoundly her loss affected the entire community. As the community mourned and tried to make sense of this senseless tragedy, investigators and the public began asking the same haunting question about Philip's motive. The question of what drove Philip Chisholm to murder Colleen Ritzer haunted investigators, the community, and the nation. The New York Post reported rumors that Philip had been romantically interested in his teacher and had lost control when she rejected his advances. A police source told the Daily Mail that one of the prevailing rumors suggested Philip had developed a significant crush on Colleen. According to this source, Colleen's naturally friendly and approachable demeanor may have been misinterpreted by Philip as romantic interest, potentially leading him to make advances toward her. A classmate of Philip's wrote on the local website Wicked Local Danvers after Colleen's murder, describing Philip as antisocial, tired, and disconnected from his surroundings. Some students expressed concerns about Philip's behavior, noting that he often appeared drawn, disengaged, and uninterested in school activities. Some even claimed he occasionally showed up to school appearing intoxicated or under the influence of substances. However, despite these warning signs, no one could have predicted the depths of Philip's darkness or the violence he was capable of committing. His classmates described a sudden and dramatic change in his behavior in the days leading up to Colleen's murder. Philip, who had previously been described as lively and outgoing when he first arrived from Tennessee, had become increasingly quiet, withdrawn, and distant. This sudden transformation raised red flags among some students, but the extent of his mental deterioration and violent intentions remained hidden until it was too late. As Philip awaited trial, his defense team was preparing a strategy that would challenge the prosecution's case and raise serious questions about the interrogation methods used and Philip's mental state at the time of his arrest. While Philip Chisholm awaited trial, a significant legal development occurred that would impact the prosecution's case. A judge ruled to suppress Philip's confession, determining that he had been questioned without an attorney present, violating his constitutional rights. Philip's defense lawyers argued that Chisholm had been detained by police for more than 3 hours after his arrest at 12:30 a.m. on October 23rd. They further contended that Philip had been handcuffed for most of that time and was not permitted to make a phone call to anyone outside the station. The defense also claimed that Philip had repeatedly requested food, but was denied by the officers. The judge authored a comprehensive 48-page ruling, in which she stated that it was clear Philip's mother had wanted an attorney present during her son's questioning. Even though Philip had waived his rights during the interrogation, the judge concluded that the court could not find beyond a reasonable doubt that he truly knew, understood, and willingly waived his Miranda rights given his age and the circumstances of the interrogation. Crime scene investigators had recovered cell phones belonging to both Philip and Colleen based on statements made during the interrogation. However, the court ruled that this evidence would not be admissible at trial due to the improper interrogation procedures. This represented a significant setback for the prosecution, as the phones potentially contained crucial evidence about the timeline and circumstances of the crime. Despite this legal victory for the defense, other critical evidence remained admissible and would be allowed to stand at trial. This included the contents of Philip's pockets, specifically Colleen's credit cards and identification, and the bloody box cutter found in his possession. The physical evidence, CCTV footage, and forensic findings would still form the backbone of the prosecution's case, even without the confession and cell phone evidence. As the trial date approached in December 2015, both sides prepared their arguments with the prosecution ready to present overwhelming physical evidence. In December 2015, Philip Chisholm stood trial for the murder of Colleen Ritzer. Assistant District Attorney for Essex County, Kate McDougall, presented the prosecution's case with compelling evidence and powerful arguments. McDougall argued forcefully that Philip was focused and unwavering in his horrific plan to kill Colleen. She maintained that Philip was not insane, but rather deliberate and calculated in his actions, demonstrating clear intent and premeditation throughout the entire sequence of events. To support their case, the prosecution presented powerful evidence to the jury. They showed surveillance tapes that captured Philip following Colleen into the bathroom moments before she was killed, providing visual documentation of his deliberate stalking behavior. These tapes offered crucial insights into how the crime was planned and executed, showing Philip's purposeful movements and his return with the recycling bin to dispose of evidence. The prosecution also presented photographs of the crime scene to the jury, including images of the injuries Colleen sustained, particularly the devastating box cutter wounds to her neck. These images demonstrated the brutal and violent nature of the attack. To provide additional context and understanding of the crime, the judge and jury were permitted to visit Danvers High School, the actual scene of the crime. This site visit allowed them to see firsthand where Colleen was attacked and murdered, including the second-floor women's bathroom and the route Philip took to dispose of her body. For many jury members, visiting the actual location was an intensely emotional experience that brought the reality of the situation into stark relief. Walking through the same hallways Colleen had walked, seeing the bathroom where she was attacked, and understanding the layout of the school made the crime feel more immediate and real. The prosecution's case was built on this overwhelming physical evidence, the timeline established by surveillance footage, and the forensic evidence that definitively linked Philip to the crime. But the defense was prepared with their own shocking argument. Philip Chisholm's defense attorney, Denise Reagan, presented a dramatically different interpretation of the events surrounding Colleen Ritzer's murder. Reagan argued that Philip was legally insane at the time he killed Colleen, suggesting that mental illness, not criminal intent, drove his actions. According to Reagan, Philip had no rational motive for his actions, which she claimed supported the insanity defense and demonstrated that he was not in control of his behavior. During the trial, the defense called forensic psychiatrist Dr. Anthony Jackson to testify about Philip's behavior following his arrest. Dr. Jackson provided crucial testimony about Philip's mental state, explaining that Philip's condition improved significantly after he was administered antipsychotic medication. According to Dr. Jackson, Philip's hallucinations and delusions decreased substantially, and he appeared more alert and oriented after receiving treatment. This evidence suggested that Philip's actions may have been significantly influenced by his compromised mental state at the time of the murder. Another key witness for the defense was Dr. Richard Dudley, a psychiatrist specializing in forensic evaluations. Dr. Dudley testified that he had evaluated Philip 7 times while he was incarcerated awaiting sentencing. According to Dr. Dudley's testimony, at the time of the murder, Philip was experiencing auditory hallucinations, hearing voices, and believed there was a ninja nearby. These voices allegedly played a significant role in Philip's decision-making process, essentially commanding him to act violently. Dr. Dudley further testified that Philip had been on the schizophrenia spectrum since childhood. While Philip had shown signs of schizophrenia in the past, Dr. Dudley explained that his condition had deteriorated substantially in the period leading up to the murder. The doctor provided important context about schizophrenia as a mental illness that fundamentally alters how a person thinks, feels, and behaves. It is a chronic condition affecting approximately 1% of the population. People with schizophrenia may experience delusions and hallucinations, confused thinking, and social withdrawal. They often struggle to distinguish between what is real and what isn't, making it extremely difficult to function in daily life. Dr. Dudley testified that Philip had recently expressed remorse for killing Colleen and stated that he would not have committed the act if he hadn't been hearing the commanding voices. However, the prosecution was prepared to challenge every aspect of the insanity defense. The prosecution vigorously disputed the defense's insanity claims, arguing that Philip Chisholm was fabricating or significantly exaggerating his psychiatric symptoms. They maintained that Philip's alleged mental illness was not a sufficient justification for his brutal actions, and that the evidence clearly demonstrated premeditation and intent. The prosecution emphasized that Philip's behavior before, during, and after the murder showed calculated decision-making inconsistent with someone experiencing a psychotic break or mental health crisis. In a final effort to sway the jury toward accepting the insanity defense, Philip's attorneys called his maternal grandfather, Eduardo Barbieri, to testify. Eduardo provided testimony about the family's documented history of mental illness, explaining that Philip's grandmother had suffered a severe mental breakdown in the early 1970s and had been treated with electroshock therapy. He further testified that several of his other children had also been treated for mental illness and had spent time in psychiatric facilities, establishing a pattern of hereditary mental health issues within the family. Additionally, one of Philip's classmates testified about the dramatic changes in Philip's behavior in the days immediately preceding Colleen's murder. This classmate described how Philip, who had initially been lively and outgoing when he first moved to Danvers from Tennessee, had become increasingly quiet, withdrawn, and distant. The sudden and dramatic transformation in Philip's demeanor was presented as evidence of his deteriorating mental state and declining psychological condition. The classmate's testimony supported the defense's argument that Philip was experiencing a mental health crisis that culminated in the violent act. The defense hoped this testimony, combined with the expert psychiatric evaluations and family history, would convince the jury that Philip was not in control of his actions due to severe mental illness. After weeks of testimony, dramatic evidence presentation, and conflicting expert opinions about Philip's mental state, the jury retired to deliberate, holding Philip Chisholm's fate in their hands. Despite the defense team's best efforts to convince the jury that Philip Chisholm was legally insane at the time of the murder, the jurors ultimately found Philip guilty of murdering Colleen Ritzer. The jury was not persuaded by the insanity defense and concluded that Philip was criminally responsible for his actions. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. During the sentencing hearing, the judge delivered powerful remarks about the nature of the crime, describing Colleen's death as brutal and senseless. The judge emphasized the horrifying details of the murder, which demonstrated the extreme suffering Colleen endured during her final moments. The severity of the sentence reflected the heinous nature of the crime and the profound loss suffered by Colleen's family, friends, students, and the entire Danvers community. Many people believed that Philip's life sentence would be the last time the public would hear about him, assuming he would spend the remainder of his life behind bars paying for his crime. The verdict provided some measure of closure for Colleen's family and the community, though nothing could truly compensate for the loss of such a beloved teacher and person. The trial had been emotionally exhausting for everyone involved, particularly for Colleen's family, who had to relive the horrific details of her murder throughout the proceedings. The community hoped they could finally begin the healing process and honor Colleen's memory without further legal proceedings. However, the story of Philip Chisholm was far from over, as shocking new charges would soon emerge that would demonstrate his continued dangerousness and propensity for violence, even while incarcerated, raising terrifying questions about what he might be capable of in the future. In 2016, when Philip Chisholm was 25 years old, he pleaded guilty to additional serious charges including attempted murder, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, and kidnapping. These charges stemmed from a disturbing incident that occurred in June 2014, approximately 1 year after he murdered Colleen Ritzer. A worker at the Massachusetts Department of Youth Services reported that Philip had attacked her in a manner eerily similar to how he had killed his teacher. According to the Youth Services worker's account, Philip followed her into a bathroom, mirroring his attack on Colleen Ritzer. Once inside, he pinned her against a wall and attempted to choke her, while also trying to stab her with a pencil. The parallels to Colleen's murder were chilling and demonstrated a disturbing pattern in Philip's violent behavior. This shocking revelation made it even clearer that Philip Chisholm was an extremely dangerous individual with no regard for human life and a specific pattern of targeting women in vulnerable situations. Following his guilty plea to these additional charges, Philip received an extra 17 to 20 years in prison, on top of the life sentence he was already serving for Colleen's murder. In a powerful victim impact statement read in court, the youth services worker who survived Philip's attack described her terrifying ordeal. In her letter, she detailed the overwhelming fear she experienced following the assault, explaining that she couldn't leave her room because she was convinced Philip was waiting for her somewhere outside. Her words served as a haunting reminder of the lasting psychological trauma Philip inflicted on his victims and the terror he inspired in those who encountered him. The attack on the youth services worker demonstrated that Philip remained dangerous, even while incarcerated and under supervision, raising serious concerns about his potential for future violence. Yet, even with these additional convictions and extended sentences, Philip Chisholm refused to accept his fate. Philip Chisholm is currently attempting to appeal his conviction to the highest court in Massachusetts. His attorney, Michael Schneider, has acknowledged that there is no doubt Philip was the person who killed Colleen Ritzer, but he continues to challenge the conviction on other grounds. Schneider argues that Philip was wrongfully convicted due to insufficient evidence supporting the jury's rejection of the insanity defense. A central component of Philip's appeal focuses on brain scan expert testimony that was not allowed during the original trial. Michael Schneider contends that the judge should have permitted this expert testimony, which would have supported Philip's claim of severe mental illness at the time of the crime. According to Schneider, these brain scans would have provided scientific evidence demonstrating that Philip was mentally ill when he committed the murder. Schneider argues that without this crucial expert evidence, the jury did not have a complete understanding of Philip's mental state, and therefore could not make a fully informed decision about his criminal responsibility. The appeal raises important questions about the intersection of mental illness and criminal responsibility, particularly in cases involving juvenile offenders. Schneider's argument suggests that the exclusion of the brain scan evidence prevented the jury from fully appreciating the extent of Philip's mental illness and how it may have impacted his ability to understand and control his actions during the commission of the crime. The news that Philip Chisholm was appealing his sentence sent shockwaves through the community once again, particularly devastating Colleen's family and friends, who now faced the possibility of reliving their nightmare and fighting once more to ensure justice for Colleen remained intact and that her memory would be honored. Learning that Philip Chisholm was appealing his sentence caused intense anger and renewed grief for Colleen Ritzer's family and friends. They spoke to the media about their determination to ensure Philip remained in prison, expressing their firm belief that his actions were planned, evil, and beyond any reasonable doubt. Colleen's family and friends emphasized that the overwhelming evidence presented at trial left no room for doubt about Philip's guilt or the premeditated nature of his crime. Following the trial and jury's verdict, Colleen's loved ones stated that they were confident justice had been served. One of the aspects that angered Colleen's family and friends most profoundly was that Philip had never shown any genuine remorse for his actions. His apparent lack of empathy and failure to take responsibility for the devastation he caused made them even more convinced that he could never be forgiven or rehabilitated. The idea that he might be resentenced or become eligible for parole earlier than his original 40-year minimum was unthinkable to them. Colleen's family emphasized that Colleen herself was never given a second chance. Her life was brutally stolen from her at just 24 years old. They found it incomprehensible that the justice system would even consider the possibility of reducing this murderer's sentence. For Colleen's family, the thought that justice might not be fully served was unbearable. They firmly believed that the guilty verdict and maximum sentence were well-deserved and appropriate, given the horrific nature of the crime. The family stressed that having to reconsider the possibility of a shortened sentence represented another painful reminder of the enormous loss they had suffered and continued to suffer every day. They remained committed to fighting any attempt to reduce Philip's sentence and ensuring that Colleen's memory and the justice she deserved would not be compromised by legal technicalities or appeals. Beyond the immediate impact on Colleen's family, her murder sent shockwaves through the entire teaching profession. The murder of Colleen Ritzer had profound and lasting effects on teachers across the country, creating heightened fear and anxiety within the education profession. The knowledge that a student could target and brutally harm one of their own made teachers feel vulnerable and unsafe in their workplace, an environment they had previously considered relatively secure. Teachers who had always believed they were working in a safe environment were forced to completely reevaluate their safety measures and implement additional precautions to protect themselves and their students. In response to the concerns raised by Colleen Ritzer's murder, Schools throughout the United States significantly increased their security measures to better protect teachers and staff. These enhanced safety protocols included stricter access controls to school buildings, expanded video surveillance systems throughout campuses, and more frequent and comprehensive lockdown drills. Many schools also hired trained security guards and conducted regular safety drills to prepare students and staff for potential emergencies. The goal of these measures was to create safer educational environments and reduce the likelihood of similar tragedies occurring in the future. The killing of Colleen Ritzer also prompted increased vigilance and awareness among educators. Teachers became more attuned to potential warning signs and concerning behaviors that their students might exhibit. Many educators reported being more cautious in their interactions with students, maintaining more professional boundaries while still trying to be supportive and accessible. Teachers said they became more aware of their surroundings and were more likely to seek help from school administrators when they felt uncomfortable or concerned about a student's behavior. This heightened awareness was intended to prevent similar acts of violence and ensure the safety of everyone on campus. Concerns were also raised specifically about teacher safety during one-on-one interactions with students. Many schools provided training for teachers on how to handle potentially violent situations. As the teaching profession grappled with these changes, Colleen Ritzer's legacy remained a powerful reminder. Colleen Ritzer's tragic death left an indelible mark on the Danvers community and the broader education world. She is remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived as a dedicated, compassionate, and beloved teacher who made a profound difference in her students' lives. Her commitment to education and her genuine care for each student exemplified the best qualities of the teaching profession. The community's response to her death, including vigils, memorials, and the moment of silence at the Boston Red Sox World Series game, demonstrated the widespread impact she had during her brief life and career. Students, colleagues, and community members continue to honor her memory by celebrating her dedication to education and her kindness toward others. The case of Philip Chisholm raises ongoing questions about juvenile justice, mental illness, and criminal responsibility. His appeal continues to work through the Massachusetts court system, keeping the case in the public eye. For Colleen's family, friends, and the Danvers community, the legal proceedings represent ongoing trauma, but they remain committed to ensuring that justice for Colleen is preserved. The enhanced safety measures implemented in schools nationwide stand as part of Colleen's legacy, a tragic reminder that prompted important changes to protect educators and students. Colleen Ritzer will always be remembered for the positive impact she made on countless lives during her time as an educator.